Hey everyone, this is now legitimately the sixth time I've recorded this. I'm just going to give up here shortly. Hopefully, this comes through. So, last week we talked about bioethics related issues, clinical issues, autonomy, death and dying, those types of things. Interestingly, the majority of you have chosen your final project topics out of that area. So, I'll leave that be. You're going to be doing a lot more studying in that area. I have not graded your case studies yet. I will be doing that this weekend probably. So this week that we're in right now, that's now almost over because this has had to be re-recorded so many times, is focusing on population health, societal health, ethics related to those things. So like health inequality and inequity, pandemic preparedness, disaster preparedness, etc. Interestingly, this information has been in this class for a long time, and we just were able to update it based on the pandemic. But pandemic preparedness, disaster preparedness, certainly not anything new for the United States or anywhere in the world for that matter. So some work on that. We had our discussion this week, which at this point everyone's posted their initial discussions, but we also have a reflection this week. Please be sure to make it a reflection. I have a tendency to see that students like to research things and make it a research paper. This should really be a reflection. So this is your thoughts on these topics, both from the provider side and then the patient side of this particular topic of the ethics related to healthcare and access and inequality and inequity and health disparities and all of that stuff. So it's really your personal view. And if you have a reference or two that you want to throw in, that's fine. But don't feel like you need to research these items. This is meant for you to talk about your thoughts on these topics. And then we have quiz, and then we have the failed ed puzzle. So let's go and take a look at the quiz from last week. So first one, if assistance in suicide becomes more socially acceptable, answer A is our correct answer. Health services organizations will have to address the ethical issues it raises. So obviously that's correct. I have thoughts of making some adjustments to this question, but B is not correct. So I didn't feel like it was, if people chose C or D, I didn't think that was a proper, those were proper answers. There was, obviously it was a little confusing, C and D, because they both kind of were the same, but B is not correct. So B states health services organizations will need to address end of life care in their mission, and think about a mission statement. So unless you're like a hospice or solely a palliative care agency, you're not likely addressing end of life care in your mission. Your mission statement is short and sweet and hopefully talks about the main focus of what you're there to do. So it's unlikely that something as specific as end of life care or something like physician assisted suicide would be addressed in that. So A is our correct answer there. Next question. In one state that legalized physician assisted suicide, it was initially feared that, and our correct answer here is that the law would be used by people who are poor and uneducated. So that is very true. Out west, when they first had legalized these situations, there was a fear that people that didn't have access to healthcare resources like insurance or money to pay for healthcare services and that weren't necessarily health literate would be taken advantage of in this system that would allow for physician assisted suicide, so that people that maybe didn't truly understand their condition would opt for this in a situation where what they had going on was really treatable. So think about a condition like breast cancer or colon cancer or skin cancer that, if caught early enough, all are very treatable and very survivable. And so there was a fear that that a patient may have they may have let's say skin cancer, may not have the money to treat it, and may be like, oh, well, it's cancer, it's going to kill me anyway, I'm just going to go this route. So it seems to people that do have access to care and access and that are health literate, it seems kind of silly to think that people would think that way. But it's certainly it's certainly a possibility that somebody may be like, well, I just don't think about the cost of treatment of, say, breast cancer. You're talking about surgery, which involves hospital bill, physician bill, all these different things, and then also talking about a follow up with chemotherapy or radiation or both, and all of the treatment that goes along with that. It can be very expensive, and if someone doesn't have the resources to pay for that and doesn't have healthcare insurance, it can be scary, and the potential exists that they would be like, well, no, I just give up. So we want to avoid that. And in states where it is legal, there are very strict guidelines around. You have to be at a point where there's futility in treatment. There's nothing else that can be done for you, and you're at the point where you're really just suffering, and that's when that would be appropriate. So it's not like someone can just be like, no, I'm done, and just go and call the doc and get the meds you need. That's not really the intent. So our answer here is C. Last one, failure to obtain consent can support a legal action for an intentional tort called battery. So battery is defined as the improper laying of hands on somebody without consent. And think about, oftentimes when we think of battery, we think of like a fight, or someone hits someone with something else. They're battered. The person is battered by the defendant in that case. Assault and battery often go together. So assault is a credible threat of laying hands on somebody, and battery is the actual action. So if I were to threaten somebody and say, hey, I'm going to punch you, that would be assault, as long as it was credible. It's not, it would have to be somebody that would be legitimate for me to punch. It couldn't be, a 7 foot tall basketball. Well, I guess I could still punch him. I'd just punch him in the abdomen or something. But it would, it'd have to be a credible threat. And then battery would be the actual action I took in punching somebody. So think about that in conjunction with a surgical procedure. There is no assault, because the assault in that situation is really informed consent. Them threatening to perform surgery on you, although it's not a threat, it's an informed consumer decision that you make to move forward with a surgical procedure. Battery occurs when that consent didn't occur. So that's why battery is the intentional tort here. And I'm hoping that now, and I've not looked at the data, but I'm hoping that now in the realm of true patient safety guidelines, things like timeouts, marking sites while the patient's still awake and having the patient be aware, all of those types of things. I'm hoping that has avoided some of these battery situations. But you can still see it when a patient ends up. So if the patient ends up in the OR, they have a surgical procedure, and the physician decides to do something else while they're there. And if the patient has a problem with that, that could be considered battery because they did not obtain consent for that procedure, assuming it contained somewhere in the consent form. So that's all I've got this week. I'm hoping this is the last one that I'm recording for this week. And if anyone has any questions, just let me know. Thanks.